Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Kwun Center for Heritage and Arts. My name's Tim Calnin. I have the great privilege of being the director of Kwun Arts, and it's wonderful to have you all here to be able to resume this series of talks in the Kwun Conversations, and especially on such an amazing subject as the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, how to rebuild a masterpiece of Gothic architecture in the 21st century. Really pleased to be welcoming our French co-presenting partners this evening, and it's my great pleasure now to invite the Consul General of France in Macau and Hong Kong, Mr. Alexandre Giorgini, to say a few words.
Thank you. Bonsoir à tous. Good evening, everybody. Tonight I'm not the Consul General of France, I'm just a Parisian guy. I was born in Paris, I lived in Paris, and that's why Notre Dame is so important for me. The subject we will evoke tonight is not a small subject, heritage. You cannot know and understand where you go if you do not understand where you come from. And this is all the meaning in every place of heritage. So what happened on April the 15th, 3 years ago, was a huge shock for us. Whatever your religion, your creed is in France, this is a symbol of our history. This is one of the birthplaces of Gothic art. This is also an important place during the French Revolution. It was turned into a Republican temple. It's the place where Napoleon, our emperor, was coronated in 1804. This is a place where General de Gaulle attended a Te Deum Mass when Paris city was freed from the German occupants in 1944. And it's a place which also inspired our literature. You all know, even kids know Notre Dame de Paris, Esmeralda, Quasimodo by Victor Hugo. The decision was taken to rebuild it. But how? How? I remember just the day after, so on April the 16th, I had a meeting at my residence with French start-uppers. And we discussed. They all know, they are all really professional in green finance, IT, AI, but nobody knows how can we rebuild in the 20th century a masterpiece of Gothic art. Nobody knows. We have lost the techniques, the secrets of the masters who build that. So it's a technological challenge. The President of the French Republic immediately announced, just after the fight, Notre Dame will be rebuilt, and it will be rebuilt in 2024. So there was a lot of discussion how to rebuild it. Should we introduce some elements of contemporary art or not? At the end, the decision was taken, and it's a wise decision, to rebuild it as it was. Now the preliminary phase of the works has ended. It has been fascinating. Many discoveries. Parisian people have learned a lot of things about their own history because major archaeological discoveries have been made in Notre Dame. So I think that tonight there is no better place to discuss all these major issues than Kwun. This is a wonderful place, mixing cultural life and heritage. I'm very grateful to you, Timothy, to your team. I'm very grateful to the French speakers also, and I hope that we all meet in 2-3 years in Paris to see Notre Dame with its spire and open to the public. So good evening. Merci beaucoup.
Without any further ado, let me introduce our distinguished guests who join us on the line from Paris. I'm very pleased to welcome, in fact, one of the familiar faces from that brief documentary, Jonathan Truillet, who's the Chief Curator of Heritage and Deputy Director of the Public Institution of Notre Dame. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. and Pascal Asselin, who's the president of the French National Union of Construction Economists. Pascal, welcome to the Dagun Conversations. We're very pleased to have you both joining us online from Paris.
I'm very happy to meet you today and to speak about our project for Notre Dame de Paris. I know that Kwun Center is an important historical building in Hong Kong, and it's a pleasure for me to share with you our professional approach of the restoration. The restoration of Notre Dame is financed only by private money because Notre Dame is an iconic monument, not only in France, but also in Europe and all around the world. The fire generated a worldwide emotional response. We have 340,000 donors and have received 840 million euro in donations. For 3 years, architects, historians, and archaeologists have tried to define the best way to conduct this project. And I think that what makes this particular project so special is that it brings us to think about how can we restore in the 21st century a Gothic masterpiece installed in the center of a big city like Paris. First, I will speak to you to explain that restoring a Gothic masterpiece requires a deep respect of the history. 4 years before the fire, 2 young architects decided to realize a study about the old wooden structure of Notre Dame. Every part of the structure, as you can see on the picture, even the spire, was described by this team. And that's why all the structure is very well known. Actually, before the fire, Notre Dame was one of the most visited monuments in Europe, with 12 million visitors a year. Why? Because, as the Council of France said at the beginning of the conference, because Notre Dame is a very important example of Gothic architecture, one of the oldest Gothic cathedrals, a place where unknown architects decide to improve technical way to build a house for God. Because also, Notre Dame is a national cathedral in France, a place where French history was made. That's why it was possible and necessary to restore the cathedral as she was before the fire. In a few words, let me talk about the principle of restoration. First, the project aimed to restore the spire and the roof of the central part of the building as it was designed by Viollet-le-Duc. We will use dry wood and lead to realize this structure, and it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge because Viollet-le-Duc, the architect of the 19th century, designed a very complex structure, which was able to resist at a stormy weather, for example. And this is also a real challenge to rebuild the spire because the spire is also an artistic item with a lot of copper and lead sculpture. The project aims also to restore the Gothic roof in wood and lead. The Gothic roof was installed above the nave and the chœur. And in this part of the cathedral, we will avoid rebuilding wood frame realized after the medieval period, because we are looking to simplify the design of this part of the roof. An historical building has to be linked with some scientific studies. And we have a real change in Notre Dame because we have a specific project, the National Scientific Action. The fire turned a new page in the history of the cathedral. And it was the beginning of the privileged moment for the observation and study of the monument that is now a site of global and holistic studies. That's why a national scientific action coordinated by the Ministry of Culture was launched in 2019. This national scientific action considers recovering the knowledge about the architectural elements and materials before the fire, extracting and saving the scientific information contained in the remains, but also coupling modeling system for geometric, structural, and acoustic studies. The scientific action comprised 157 research staff from 50 research units organized around 8 working groups. We have working groups about wood, but also about metal, stone, glass, structure, acoustic, heritage, emotion, and digital data. And with the help of this national scientific action, we have a brand new understanding of the cathedral. This work is a way to improve our knowledge of the cathedral, but also to get a better restoration project. The scientific action is a way to have a better understanding of the cathedral history. For example, we are going to realize a huge study about the stained glasses of the cathedral. And we are going to understand that they are older than we thought before the fire. With the help of the scientists, it was also possible to choose the better stone for the project. And now, you have a picture of the stone here. And now we are excavating the stone, the new stone, to be ready at the end of 2022. But the scientific action raises also issues that are very important for the restoration project. For example, scientific action improves also our knowledge about structural issues, which are very important to rebuild the vault. We have a special worksite organization to protect workers from the lead dust. During the restoration project, we have to deal with this risk.
I think Pascal, you're going to start from a rather different and unusual perspective. So let's hand over to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Jonathan. You answered maybe all the questions already answered. Good evening, Excellencies. Good evening, everyone. I'm very impressed to speak in front of over 300 people. So I'm Pascal. I'm a quantity surveyor. I'm currently, I advise the client, Notre Dame de Paris, the French government, to advise him for the budget. So I'm going to show you, maybe it's a synthesis explanation of Jonathan and Mr. Le Général. April 2019, Notre Dame de Paris caught fire, and the roof and most of the centuries-old roofing timbers disappeared in the flame. From these pictures, you can see the extent of the damage. The wall frame is burnt, and as the spire fell, it burst the stone vaults. Fortunately, the stained glass windows were spared from the flames. However, the tons of water used to extinguish the fire caused the floors and walls to flood. Lead dust from the burned roof structure has become embedded in the stones and the floors, which means that we have to very carefully clean all the facings, all the while being extremely then cautious and taking reinforced protective measures. Immediately after the fire, safety and clearing work began. The scaffolding that was in place at the crossing of the transepts had to be dismantled pieces by pieces, using cranes up to 8 meters high. This extremely dangerous and delicate work was completed in November 2020. It was during the night. Yes, next morning after the fire, the damage. We put down an umbrella to avoid the bad weather. As I said, shoring was put in place to consolidate all the arches. We already see for the Jonathan presentation. As you can see, all of the stained glass windows were dismantled and protective coverings and shoring were installed, all on the windows. Inside, protective nets have been installed throughout the cathedral. These measures prevent stones or chunks of wood from falling on the workers. All of the pillars have been linked together with cables. This helps prevent the walls from moving apart and helps strengthen the building. As you can see, we are now in the upper part of the cathedral. Here, we see large beams and a floor that allows workers to hang from the underside to remove pieces of wood that have fallen on the vaults. It also allows workers to avoid stepping and putting unnecessary weight on the upper surface on the vaults. On this picture, you can see the general organization. The health constraints due to the presence of lead and COVID also are very strict. To enter the work site, you must strip down, put on disposable underwear and coverall, and then take a shower upon leaving. This protocol is the same for all the people who are working on the site. The periphery of the cathedral is protected by a sheet metal wall 4 meters high, fitted with checkpoints and cameras. The first is considered as a clean zone as it was not contaminated by lead, while the second is considered as a dirty zone contaminated by lead. In this second zone, you have to strictly respect the health constraints. Large shelters have been installed in the western part of the construction site to take complete inventory of stones. All recovered stones are cleaned, digitized, and then placed in the original context. This is a blank assembly or anastolysis, which then allows the pieces of stone to be replaced in their original places. For comparison, we have been using the same technique of an Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia for several years now. On the site, we have also a team from 30 architects, 15 engineers, and 4 economists regularly on the site. In addition to these technical specialists, we have about 25 people for the site security, as well as 15 government technicians. Finally, you must add scientists to study the numerical aspect, example anastolysis, or dendrochronology specialists, who study the nature and the dating of stones, of old stones, wood, and timbers. When the site will be in full speed, there will be close to the average will be 300 workers. All these buildings all the buildings around the site serve as offices, changing rooms, and showers for all workers on the site. Renovation phases. The choice that has been made for the restorations is for it to be identical. The roofing will be made of lead. The framing of the spire will be redone with oak timbers. Obviously, the fire detection system will be reinforced and fire-rated partitions will be integrated into the framework. The areas of collapsed vaults will be redone in stone and the painting decoration restored. The same goes for the stained glass windows, which will be restored and put back into place. Obviously, the electricity and heating will be completely redone. On this picture, you can see the areas that will be restored first. In green, the work that will be completed in 2024, and in red, 26, 27. Now, I would like to let's focus on the works that will begin in 2022 and which represent the most delicate part to restore, la flèche, the spire. This work has been broken down into 9 steps. As you can see, we will start with the work inside the crossing of the transepts. Steps 1 to 5, we start by allowing a metal floor on which a scaffolding will be mounted. Then a second floor will be placed just below the vaults which have collapsed. Shoring will be put in place to make the area safe, and then the scaffolding will continue. Step 6 continued with the assembly of the scaffolding up to the top of the spire with, on the right, an elevator. Step 7 have put in place the new oak frame, and then it is covered with lead. Step 8 have dismantled the scaffolding, close the vault, and remove the shoring. Step 9, we can hold the Easter Mass. We can hold the Easter Mass 2024, or maybe, certainly, I don't know yet, Christmas Mass. You can see on these slides, on these different pictures, the wood forest that will be used to reduce this zone, which will include the spire, its base, the 2 transepts, and the frame sector on each side of the nave. And you can also see the spiral staircase to the interior of the spire. Then the spire and the transepts will be covered with lead. We will also put back the statue of the King of Judah, which had been put down just before the fire. To complete the restoration of this area, the vaults will be rebuilt and the original paintings will be redone. Then there will be the 2 gable walls on either side of the transepts. Then there will be the 2 gable walls on the either side of the transepts, which suffered greatly during the fire. You can admire the quality of the sculptures that will be redone, as well as the stained glass windows. There you have it, the zones that will be completed to April 2024. In conclusion, emergency work, including securing the building and clearing the rubble, has been completed. The full diagnosis for the restoration was completed in December 2020, and during 2021, calls for tender have been launched for the reconstruction of the framing and roofs. The reopening, as we told you, the reopening of the cathedral is scheduled for April 2024. However, the full restoration will be not completed before 2035. Currently, a few words about the budget. Currently, the budget spent on emergency and cleaning works amount to 165 million euros. The overall cost is estimated for the moment to be between 500 and 700 million euros, which includes damage caused by the fire plus overall restoration. And of course, you must add some VAT. Thank you for your attention, and rendezvous to Paris in 2024.
Thank you very much, Pascal.